Alrighty, folks, let's get into it. How's it going, everybody? Thank you all so much for chiming in for the latest post-game show here in WardyNYM as we break down everything that there is to know about the latest Mets loss as they lose just their third series of the season. Coincidentally enough, all two West Coast teams, this time being the San Diego Padres, game blown out for a second consecutive night. This time 13-2 is your final. Another game where there's very little positives for the Amazons that we'll be breaking down. And for the Padres, it wasn't a matter of what wasn't going right, but pardon me, I should say what was going right, but rather what wasn't going right, as this team has been absolutely rolling, one of the better teams in baseball in the NL, and they definitely handed it to the Mets in this one, guys. So definitely a lot of negatives we'll be getting into. I want to make sure that I emphasize that the sky is in fact not falling. Do we have every reason to be criticizing and frustrating with this team? Absolutely. And again, I'll be deep diving my complete raw thoughts in tonight's show. And just like last night's show, folks, we'll be going live for tops a half hour here as we're 10 minutes away from 1 a.m. Eastern time here on the East Coast. And then I'll be hopping on Padres YouTuber's channel and Hogwatch, which he does a great job post-game shows just like this. He's going to be living it up. All of his Padre fans are going to be ecstatic. And I'm going to be ranting on his show after this one. So make sure to chime in for that as well. I'll have links in the comments down below to check it out live or on replay in case you do in fact miss it or don't see it right away. But first of all, I appreciate everyone chiming in, my 50-plus viewers. The fact that we get any viewership tonight after a brutal game like this means more to me than you could ever possibly imagine. I know that the vast majority of you guys that are chiming in right now are on replay, so I appreciate you guys too. Continue to smash that like and subscribe button as you first chime in. Help us get to 100-plus likes by the end of the show. Would be greatly appreciated. And 16K subs for the next short-term goal here in WardyNYM. 1,200 with the $5 donation. Thank you so much for that. Might as well address it now, and then I'll get into breaking down and analyzing what was an abysmal loss for the Mets. One of, if not their worst loss of the season. Totally pathetic. Bassett, Pucky ain't alone in this 100%. Again, thank you so much. You were at the game too. 1,200. Oh my goodness. When it rains and pours. That was definitely the case. I appreciate that donation. I'm so sorry you had to witness this game live. Again, the Mets entered tonight's game, guys, without both Pete Alonso and Starling Marte. And that, in a nutshell, wasn't negative to begin with. This was a Mets lineup that you knew, you have the feeling was going to struggle tonight, not just without two of the best players in this lineup out of the lineup, along with the fact that they're facing Sean Manaea, who's had plenty quality starts this year, and something that has been the biggest kryptonite for the Mets for over a calendar year now. And if you guys have been watching the Mets consistently the way that I have, you're very much so in agreement, and that's the fact that the Mets simply cannot hit lefties to save their life. Outside of the likes of Robbie Ray and Blake Snell, two guys that have been shells of what they once were a year ago or the past couple of years, outside of those two competent southpaws, there's been no other solid lefty that the Mets have taken advantage of or at least jumped on so far this season, let alone last year. Every lefty felt like Randy Johnson, and we're seeing that again here. And don't get me wrong, this is not to discredit Sean Manaea and his great outing today, but the point I'm trying to make, folks, and again, I apologize if the visuals are bad for a minute or so. Don't worry, they will pick up. You guys know the drill by now. I've been having connection issues, and until they get resolved, it is what it is right now. But not like anyone really cares about that right now. What we care about is this Mets loss and what happened. But Sean Manaea, even with as great of a start as he had tonight, just like Yu Darvish did yesterday for the Padres outside those three hit-by pitches, which, again, still frustrated about that. No less, the Mets, if they want to go anywhere this year, if they want to make sure that they have a deep run into the playoffs, they need to make sure that they actually know how to hit lefties, because this is something that the Mets simply have not done on a consistent level. And it's not just talking about tonight's game. This is not an anomaly of a game. This has been happening for quite literally at minimum a year and a half, if not longer. The Mets just can't hit lefties. And again, if they want to go far, if they want to go anywhere, they need to make sure that they can jump on opposing lefties, because it's only going to get harder from here, especially when you get down the stretch in the season, facing off against some of the best southpaws in the game in the NL. So just want to throw that some food for thought, because this is something that all of us Mets fans knew heading into the year. And this is something that they, to this point, still struggle mightily against. And not just that, but the fact that Chris Bassett having another clunker of a start. This was a battle between the two former Oakland A's and Sean Manaea, who I would have loved if the Mets acquired in the offseason, but I love the fact that they got Bassett. I still love Bassett, but there's no denying that Chris Bassett, over his past 5 starts, has an over 7 ERA. This guy's been struggling like no tomorrow, and I really do not believe it's a coincidence that, I don't believe that, it's separate from the fact that this has all really started and spiraled downward since Max Scherzer's injury on the IL. Because one thing that I felt really confident about early on with Chris Bassett is I love his arsenal. I love his pitch mix with the 6 different pitches. But Bassett, I knew he would thrive in this rotation with the 2 best pitchers in baseball in front of him and Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer. The Mets started the year without Jacob deGrom, and they still have yet to see the man pitch. And Mad Max, that definitely was a nice cushion for someone like Bassett, who again was protected in the A's rotation during his time in Oakland with the likes of Sean Manaea and Frankie Montas. But now that Chris Bassett has essentially been looked at, that ace, if you will, outside of Cookie Carrasco and his stellar performance consistently this year, he hasn't been able to handle not just the pressure, but against strong teams. And don't get me wrong, these teams are really good. The Padres are really good. The Giants are really good. These are teams that, respectfully, you can understand if you falter against. But Bassett is not in a groove. He's clearly pressing, and he is right now in a pitching slump. And I fully expect him to get back and better. But it just further proves to us Mets fans that at least early on to this point, that Bassett is not a guy that the Mets can really lean on in high-pressure situations, high-leverage situations with that protection in this rotation. Bassett as a number 3, number 4 is the best situation without question. To have that cushion with deGrom and Scherzer healthy in this rotation, Tyler McGill, Cookie Carrasco, Taijuan Walker, I mean, the sky is endless for someone like Chris Bassett and having great success in this rotation. But in the top of it, we're quickly learning, I should say, that Bassett at this point just isn't that guy. And again, not to discredit the great offense from the Padres, from the Giants and other clubs, but Chris Bassett is a damn good pitcher. And we know that 1, he's struggling right now, and 2, high leverage situations, not his cup of tea, at least since Mad Max has been put down. And again, that definitely is something that we should be making note of, folks. But now let's break down, how did the Mets get to this point, okay? Why did they falter so much? Well, again, don't get me wrong, the offense was abysmal. If you look at the lineup tonight, they're clearly starting off in Nimmo clearly came in for 1 pinch hit because he was called up today for the Mets because of Starling Marte's injury. And before I get into the lineup, I would like to emphasize the injury updates for the Mets because, yes, you guys know the story by now. You watched the game, I'm sure. But, of course, we see the injuries for Pete Alonso and Starling Marte. Thankfully, as I said in last night's post-game show, I did not think that it would be anything serious. Everyone was antsy awaiting the results, and both Marte and Alonso look like as of now that they will be avoiding injury list stints, which is fantastic. John Heyman said that Marte going on the IL was basically a likelihood earlier today, so that schmuck got something wrong again. Sounds like a day that ends in a Y. But outside that, Marte with his quad tightness and Alonso, who has clear swelling on his hand and is currently dealing with that in rehab, both of them look like that they should be back within the Mets lineup hopefully over the next couple days. And the Mets having an off day tomorrow. Today, technically, at the time recording this, couldn't come at a better time. So both Marte and Alonso, fingers crossed that they stay off the IL, and that is massive for the Mets. Again, without them in the lineup, we know that this offense is struggling mightily, but especially to have them back, potentially even back in the Halo series before the Mets get back to the East Coast next week on Tuesday, that is unbelievably important. So love to see that. That was the best case scenario for both Marte and Alonso alike. So great to see that they look like that they're not going to be out for a long period of time, at least to this point. But because of this, in part, we saw the Mets sign a speedster and Terrence Gore. In case you guys don't know, Terrence Gore, the speedster outfielder who has over 40 stolen bags in just around 70 games played at the MLB level, 31-year-old outfielder. He's been on 3 World Series teams in his career. In the 2015 Royals, we don't like that. The 2020 shortened season Dodgers, and last year in the Braves. So, not that he had a crazy impact, but Gore has been on a nice trend as of late on being on clubs that have, say, won it all. Now, will this trend continue? We'll soon find out, but I love just that connection in itself. I mean, Gore is really exactly what the Mets hope that Malik Smith, in case you guys don't remember Malik Smith, speedster outfielder that didn't crack the Mets lineup, but was a guy that the Mets were hoping could bring some speed for them as a bench outfield option. But that just simply didn't transpire over the past couple years. Travis Jankowski has been that weapon for the Mets, and he looks like he'll be back over the next couple weeks. But now Gore, should he get ramped up and be with the Mets at any point this season, he will basically provide that essential spark that we've seen with Jankowski. Not to the same extent, but surely has that speed and definitely is intriguing. Just further outfield depth for the Mets. Not known for the bat, just strictly a guy, if you can get him on base as a pinch runner, whatever it may be, more likely than not, he's going to steal a bag for you. So fine minor league signing acquisition for the Mets today. And of course, they brought Khalil Lee because of Marte's injury, but it doesn't look like that's going to last long. Adonis Medina was sent down by the Mets today. Medina, who had one of the best saves for the Mets this year and one of the most crucial save opportunities against the Dodgers to secure that series split a couple days ago. Medina gets a short end of the stick. Again, that's baseball. I expect him to be back soon. They just had to do a corresponding move, so I understood it. A soul for a soul, if you will. But now let's get in the Mets because you had Nimmo leading off in center field, Mark Cannon in right field, Lindor at shortstop, J.D. Davis there at first base, and J.D. at first definitely did not look nearly as good as the past couple of games. And my quick conclusion is that J.D. Davis plays two positions competently, and even that is a slight stretch, and that is a designated hitter position, and that is also being a relief pitcher. At third and first, not loving what I'm seeing so far for J.D. Davis, but again, defense in the infield, that's something that we all know far too well that J.D. is not having a strong suit with. But then you have Eduardo Escobar there. Eduardo, who originally was playing at third, then shifted to second later in the game, as did JD, then eventually shifted there to third in the eighth inning. Jeff McNeil in left field, Luis Gourmet at short, Tomas Nido in the 8-hole at center. Not center, I don't even know what I'm saying right now. At the catching position, and Nick Plummer, the rookie, another start at DH in which he went hitless. The Mets as a whole only had 5 hits tonight, folks. And again, this game ended right before he even started because the Padres just jumped on Chris Bassett early and often. And you could tell that the Mets were, 1, rattled, still not having Alonso and Marte in this lineup. 2, could not handle competent pitching from a southpaw and Shamanaya. And 3, when Bassett gives up a total of 7 runs through 4 innings, yeah, that's not a great look. And then you add on an additional 4 to make it what? At that point, pardon me, I shouldn't even say that because Bassett was pulled after 3.1 innings pitch. Point is the Mets had such an early deficit. Yes, they've been resilient, but the Padres are a really strong team this year, so no one should be surprised by their success. Only thing that it was a little surprising was the amount of offense, knowing that the Padres entered this series being one of the worst offenses in all the NL. So that's not positive. The pitching I understood, but the offense, that definitely hurt a bit with the likes of Jerks and Profar. We had, Cronenworth trying to do his best Escobar impression, was a double short or a triple short of the cycle tonight. So they had a lot of things rolling for the Padres. They deserve the credit. But the Mets, how did the run scored? In case you guys aren't aware, it started off with Nomar Mazara, who had solid numbers against Chris Bassett entering tonight's game. Had an RBI single to make an early 1-0 lead for the Padres. Then we get to the third inning, and Manny Machado gets an RBI double and advances to third base because of a throwing error by Francisco Lindor. Lindor, who the past 2 days, based on pitching matchups, looked like a key player to watch, but he was anything but. I had concerns with Lindor at the right side of the plate tonight. He has not batted well from the right side in comparison to the left side so far this season, so I'm not all that surprised, but between the likes of Lindor the past 2 games and with these injuries, you need guys like Lindor and others to step up, and unfortunately the Mets just could not muster nearly enough to make this series even somewhat competent that they could stand a chance. After game 2, it really felt like it was over, and that held true again tonight. But then we get to the 4th inning, folks, and bases loaded with no outs for Chris Bassett, and that leads Jerks and Profar, who killed the Mets this entire series. He's been phenomenal leadoff spot for the past month plus for the Padres now. A late bloomer who was originally a top prospect years ago with the Texas Rangers, was with the Oakland A's, and now is thriving here with the Padres after a year or 2 with them. 2 RBI single, Jake Cronenworth with a 2 RBI double, Manny Machado with an RBI double, and I'm trying to believe, I think, yes, okay. Then we get to the 5th inning, folks, and you have Jerks and Profar with another RBI double. Cronenworth with a 3-run home run. Cronenworth just simply dominated him, and Profar single-handedly dominated the Mets this entire game and for a good portion of the series. But in the 7th inning, J.D. Davis gets a single, Eduardo Escobar gets a double, Jeff McNeil with an infield RBI. It hits off of Sean Manaea, a little comebacker. Manaea was okay, stayed in the game. That was the Mets' first of 2 runs scored tonight, folks. And then after that, Luis Gourmet brings in a run, no RBIs though, because it was because of a double play, fielder's choice situation. Then we got there to the 7th inning, and the bottom of the 7th, Trent Grisham gets himself an RBI ground out, and there was a throwing error that leads to the 13th run scored of the night there. And man, oh man, again, not a pretty game for the Mets. I think that's an understatement, and I know that my visuals are not looking good right now. I do apologize once more for that, guys. I really do. My connection has just been terrible for the past 2 weeks. I've been troubleshooting, trying to fix it, and hopefully we do get it fixed in time for the start of the Mets' next series early next week. So fingers crossed on that one. But in a nutshell, guys, I don't think that there's too much that I need to break down this game. Chris Bassett simply didn't have it, but he hasn't had it for numerous games now over his past 5 starts for the Mets. And this is, again, a cultivation of facing really good teams that, again, you have to give credit where credit's due. Bassett, as strong of a star as he's been, he's not perfect and he's not an ace for the Mets. We're aware of that. But between that, Max Scherzer not being in the rotation, so having no cushion. I mean, Cookie Carrasco has been the unsung hero in this Mets rotation all year long. That doesn't get talked about nearly enough. And I actually plan on discussing that in a video soon, probably after his next start, because I don't want to jinx something and do a video right before and say he gets shelled. So we'll see what happens with Cookie's next start. But no less, between Bassett, his inconsistencies, and this Mets offense in this West Coast trip, they are now 3-4 now on the West Coast trip. They can still salvage and go above 500, and they can win at least 2 or 3 against the Angels. The Angels, who fired Joe Maddon yesterday, have really been struggling, and I don't like the fact that the Angels have been having this prolonged losing streak and lack of success entering that series, because you know it's destined to break at some point. Don't love those odds, and we also don't know what the likelihood is of Alonso Marte returning in this West Coast trip to begin with. But what I do know, again, is this Mets offense, guys, in the 4 losses have only mustered 5 runs total in this 4 losses. That is not good whatsoever. And outside of, what the Mets were able to do tonight, I'm sorry, not even 4 runs. I shouldn't even say that. What did I say? I think I said 5 runs in the 4 losses. No, I'm completely wrong. The Mets have only mustered 3 runs in the 4 losses that they've had in this West Coast trip. So when the Mets are winning, they need to score basically at minimum 5+ runs. And when they're losing pretty bad. And it's pretty lopsided. In the Dodgers series, it wasn't for a lack of pitching, but it was for a lack of overall offense. And you can even justify that even with Chris Bassett getting shelled tonight and the Mets not having the best pitching from Taijuan Walker last night. This is one of those things where, yes, it impacts the offense a bit, but between Alonso Marte being out, even with all these factors, this offense needs to be better, and they simply did not step up when the Mets need it most. It's definitely something that I hope that they will get back and bounce back. I fully expect them to. I'm not concerned about the Mets in the slightest, but I do have my rightful criticisms and my fair frustrations about what has transpired in this West Coast trip. The Mets, all 3 of the series that they have lost so far this year, folks. And again, the Mets have only lost 3 series this year. So let's keep that in mind. And 2 of the 3 series losses were to 2 of the better teams in all of the NL, and the Giants, and that being, of course, in the Padres, but all West Coast teams, the Mariners, Giants, and Padres, and that 1 series split was against the Braves. So all good teams outside the Mariners. That was the anomaly of the series, and the Mets lost that series in part because of not being able to hit a lefty and Marcos Gonzalez in game 1 of that series. Let's not forget that when Max Scherzer pitched an absolute gem, and we couldn't get him the W. But once more, the point I'm trying to make is I'm not concerned about this Mets team. They're 38 now and 21 on the year. They're 3 games away from being 20 games above 500. But we all know that right away, the Mets headed into this West Coast trip, headed into this Padres series with a sizable lead on both the Braves and the Phillies, with them rolling. But these teams have now both not stopped winning. The Phillies haven't lost a game since firing Joe Girardi. That's what's felt like, at least, or close to. And the Braves have been on an absolute tear now. So just like that, the Mets went from they were at one point 10 to 10.5 games ahead of the Braves for first in the division. Now that has already narrowed down to 7 games. So don't get me wrong, I'm still comfortable with the Mets lead, but we all know how quick things can turn on its head. And that's why it was that vital, that important, that crucial for the Mets to get off to the amazing start of the season that they had. Because June, we all knew that the schedule wouldn't be easy, and we're quickly learning again with these injuries, all the excuses in the world, that you still completely understand that this Mets team, this schedule's not easy, and it's not going to get any better either. They don't have a pretty August down the stretch this year either, with around 15 games balancing between the Dodgers, the Braves, and the Yankees. So right now, it's important that they continue to get up on the right foot, bounce back, have a dominant series against the Halos, at minimum win 2 of 3. That day off tomorrow is going to be brutal for us fans, but it'll be huge, of course, for the Mets in healing up 1, and 2, trying to rightfully get their minds in the right spot here as they enter the LA Angels matchup. But guys, I'm going to be answering your comments here in the next couple minutes, and we'll be live for a total of a half hour in tonight's show. Once this is done, I will, of course, be heading on to Hogwatch's Padres YouTube channel. Make sure to check it out. Him and his followers are going to be ranting about the Mets. I can't even speak right now. The Padres absolutely dominant win, and I'm going to be ranting about the Mets loss and truly further on what went wrong for the Mets tonight. I'm trying to stay a little, composed right now. I'm frustrated though. I think I'm going to voice those opinions more raw. That I know I can vent to the Padres fan because he's just going to take it and eat it up for breakfast. It's going to be a fun discussion, so stay tuned for that. Like I said, I will have the link in the comments down below, and once I've entered that show, in case you guys haven't seen already. But what I will say to wrap up this before I get your comments and cut things off for people on replay, the Mets brutal series. They didn't just have pitching, but they didn't have the offense. And when you don't have both those things, that, of course, is a recipe for a lack of success. No one should be surprised because of the fact that the Mets didn't have either of these things, that was the falter for them in the series. All we can hope for is that they bounce back. Give credit where credit's due. I'm not going to undermine the likes of the Padres, the Giants, and other teams that have fared well against the Mets so far this season. These are very good ball clubs, and they deserve that credit absolutely. But with saying that, the Mets still should have been better. I would have liked to see a more valiant effort these past couple of games. I know the Mets lineups weren't pretty, especially when you have J.D. Davis consecutively in multiple games in a row being at the first base position. Nick Plummer, who again is inexperienced, he had 2 bombs in his first 2 games, but again, he's young. He's going to swing through a lot of pitches, and I don't expect him to be a stud. He's a flash in a pan until proven otherwise type guy. And then you have, Patrick Mazeika gained some at-bats. Still, he's been inconsistent. The same thing with Luis Gourmet's come down to earth. Brandon Nimmo's come down to earth. Hasn't really been the exact same since his wrist injury all the way back in the Phillies series, if not right before that. Francisco Lindor did not have a good series. I mean, most Mets did not have a good series. The only guy that stood out, guys, in my Warriors top 3, not even top 5, because there wasn't a top 5 to discuss, was the likes of Eduardo Escobar. Another game with another extra base hit. He was so dominant for the most part in this series and throughout this West Coast trip, which has been a blessing. Escobar went from being the one guy in this Mets lineup that wasn't hitting to now being the one guy in the Mets lineup that is hitting here in the West Coast to start off the month of June. Jeff McNeil had a stall day to play 2 for 4 with that RBI. Again, it was a comeback to that hit Mania. They was able to get an infield RBI single. And Adam Ottavino had 1 scoreless inning for the Mets. Chris Bassett, again, 7 runs, 6 earned runs, and 3.1 innings pitched. You got to be better than that. Bassett's season ERA is now 4.35. Steven Nagosic came in relief, and he had his worst outing by far of the year. Bolden Nagosic and Holderman alike have given up the most runs out of the pen so far this year for their respective selves. You had Holderman giving up 3 runs yesterday, and that was the most he gave up by far. And today, same thing with Nagosic giving up 4 earned, and now he has a 3.55 ERA. Adam Ottavino was strong. Joely Rodriguez did not have a good day. Give up an earned run, now has a sub-6 ERA of 5.49. And Seth Lugo with a scoreless 8th there with a 3.7 ERA. So all around, not a pretty game, not a pretty series for the Mets. Something that we need to push off. I'll be discussing it more tomorrow as we start to break down the series preview against the Halos. Stay tuned for that. That'll probably be around 5 p.m. Eastern time or so make sure to check it out, guys. But now, enough of me ranting. Let's get into your comments, whatever you guys got for me here, and then we'll wrap things up. But for people on replay, which is not you guys in the live show, this is where I'll be cutting things off. So please make sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments below. How did you feel after this brutal, and I truly mean brutal, series loss for the New York Mets? Just their 3rd series loss of the year. So I will gladly take that for a Mets team that is currently, 17 games above 500. I'm not complaining, but again, criticisms were rightfully deserved to be had here. And let's just see how the Mets bounce back. Hopefully Alonso Marte will be back soon, because we are quickly learning that without these guys in the lab, this Mets team, the offense is not nearly what it could be and should be. Even with how deep it is, you need Alonso, the MVP caliber type player that he is. You need the likes of Starling Marte, who is one of the best outfielders in all of baseball. Speed demon, great defense, and of course, great plate approach, as is. Just huge electricity is what he brings to this Mets lineup on every given night. When you don't have those guys, yeah, it's not a good recipe for this Mets club, and we have learned that rather fast. But again, let me know your thoughts down below, folks, in the comments. Make sure to smash that like and subscribe on if you enjoyed the show, regardless of the abysmal loss and overall abysmal series. And again, in the live stream, let's answer your comments now. But again, for people on replay, this is where I'll be cutting things off.